Hello and welcome. This is Jim Coppin with Rankin Technical College. This video is about building a web page template with HTML5. And this is the second chapter in the book that we're using for this course. So let's take a look at the objectives here. So when we finish this chapter, you should be able to explain how to manage website files, describe the use of HTML5 semantic elements, determine the elements to use when setting the structure of a web page, design and build a semantic wireframe, creating a web page template, insert comments into an HTML document, and add static content to a web page template. And also insert symbols and codes and other character entities. Describe and use heading elements. Describe the benefits of validating web documents. Validate an HTML template. Create a home page from an HTML template. And add unique content to a web page. So building a website from scratch involves a lot of time and planning. Professional web design services are in high demand. Before building a website, plan it. It includes meetings with clients or stakeholders. And as far as what a stakeholder is pretty much anybody who's affected by you doing it, right? It could be more than just the clients itself. It could be people within your organization. Stakeholders is a very broad term. It's kind of really about anybody who could be impacted by the project you're contemplating. Okay. So the project in this chapter follows generally accepted guidelines for planning and building a web page template and homepage. It's all about creating website folders, create a template, enter your semantic elements, add comments and content, validate the document, and create and view the homepage. Activities involved in designing a website. So first, you're going to start with planning, articulating the website's purpose, identifying that target audience, creating a sitemap and wireframe, selecting graphics and colors to use in the site, determining whether to design for an optimal viewing experience across a range of devices. I kind of mentioned that before. A lot of it's based on kind of your target audience and what they're going to be using. Are you creating this website to be viewable by anybody in the public, or is there a specific group? And maybe it's like a certain profession that if it's going to be, let's just say, lawyers or doctors or whatever, that probably maybe just in an office or something, and they're accessing it on a computer as opposed to their phone, right? So all of these are considerations to determine what kind of design you want. If you want a lot of stuff on a page, very busy, a lot of functionality, that's better for like a desktop or laptop computer, something where you've got more space. You have to really design things different if you're wanting to design things just for a small mobile phone, right? So designing what's the purpose of the site, target audience. So this is a Forward Fitness Club project here. We're not necessarily going to do the project. I'm just going to kind of show you it for the most part. Multi-platform display. Forward Fitness recognizes the growth of smartphone and tablet usage and wants a single website that provides an optimal viewing experience. Okay. Wireframe and sitemap. Initial website will consist of 5 web pages arranged in a hierarchical structure with links to the home page on every page. Each page will include a header area, navigation area, main content area, and footer area. Okay, graphics wants to display, a logo, branding, photos, etc. Color, the Forward Fitness Club wants to use a black and white as the primary colors. For clean and sophisticated look. To make the content easy to read, the website will use a serial font style for paragraphs, lists, and other body content, while providing contrast by using sans serif font style for navigation links and headings. And as far as accessibility, standard accessibility attributes such as alternative text for graphics will be used to address accessibility. And I know that's a lot. We're early into this course. You will learn more about these things as we continue on, okay? As far as colors and accessibility and things like that, okay? So a sitemap indicates how, this is really just for, designing. This is just kind of the planning stage, right, for the design. Sitemap indicates how pages in the website relate to each other. Okay, we have a home page. I'm not going to just read through all of this. I'm just going to kind of pick up the pace a little bit. We're going to go through some of the stuff, and then we're going to go take a look. Okay. Home page introduces the fitness center. You have an about page, a classes page, nutrition page, and a contact us page. Okay. Sitemap continued. Here's the pictorial diagram on the sitemap. Here's a wireframe. It depicts the layout of the web page. And I think, like I've said before, wireframe can, we can use different tools for that. And I will show you some tools at some point here on creating wireframes for web pages. File management. Websites use several types of files. You have HTML files, image files, audio, video, cascading style sheets, right? A lot of this is new. We haven't even gotten here yet. This is just kind of from a planning standpoint, right? Each site must follow a systematic method to organize its files. File management. Here's your fitness. Here's your CSS, your images, your media, your scripts. Okay. Okay. Yeah. So this is just showing you we're going to be creating this, I'll be creating this within Visual Studio Code, right? This is just showing you can do this within Windows Explorer. So let's talk a little bit about semantic elements. Begin a new HTML document by adding a basic required HTML elements like we've done on the other assignments for chapter 1, doc type, HTML head and body elements. HTML5 introduced several new semantic elements, okay? And what semantic really means is it describes what you're doing, right? Semantic elements kind of, a header, right? So you're thinking a header is going to be at the top, right? A footer's at the bottom, right? Nav is for navigation. So they're just very descriptive type tags, okay? There's other type of tags that are used within HTML. It's kind of like a div tag. A div tag is just kind of a divide, you can put different things in a div tag. Div tags are not really, is not considered a semantic tag, right? So there's some semantic tags and there's some non-semantic tags, okay? But these header, nav, main, footer, these are all semantic tags. So just showing you about using HTML5 semantic tags. Basically the header of the page, navigation. Main indicates the start. Go ahead and read this here. Indicates the start and end. Maybe I'll actually make this a little bigger. Main indicates the start and end of the main content area of a web page, contains the primary content of the web page. Only one main element can appear on a page. Okay. Footer indicates, obviously a footer is towards at the bottom of your page, right? Sections, so you can have section areas in a web page contain specific grouping of content. It would be a group of content on your page that's similar in nature, you can put that in one section. Then you may have some other content on your page that's similar, that group of content is similar in some aspects, and you can put that in another section, right? Multiple sections. Article indicates the start and end of an article area for a web page, such as a forum or a blog post, etc. Aside indicates the start and end of an aside area of a web page. Usually you're going to have that on the right-hand side or the left-hand side. Kind of all depends. And it contains information about some nearby content, and it's typically displayed as kind of a sidebar. Okay. This is just showing. Make this a little bigger. This is showing. Here's just showing the. Here's your wireframe where you just say header, nav, main, footer, right? Your wireframe, you're just using general terms for things. You're just using, this is, we want a header, and, you're not putting code there. Wireframe's not about code. Someone who can create the wireframe isn't necessarily a coder. It could be anybody, right? So a wireframe can kind of be created by anybody. But, a coder is going to actually put the code in there, right? So here's the header element on the left-hand side. You got nav, main element, footer element, and it's just kind of showing that, okay? Go a little bit smaller here. I'm creating a web page template. A hallmark of a well-designed website is that its web pages have the same look and feel. So pages have the same layout, color scheme, typography, and style of graphics. Elements work the same on each page. Templates are used to make sure web pages in a site share a standard layout. HTML documents containing elements that should appear on each page. So instead of creating a web page from scratch, open the template document in your text directory and save it using the name of the new web page. I will show you later. For now, we're just going to kind of follow how the book wants to do this. I will show you later a way in Visual Studio that we can kind of save that off, that you can bring that in at different points when needed. Creating a web page template, HTML documents with elements that define a web page structure. And it's just telling you to add the semantic elements to a web page. These are things that you're already aware of. The browser tab, knowing that the title is going to be up there in the browser tab window. Comments. So also you can add comments, and it's always a good idea to add comments to your files. And for HTML, this is how you create a comment. Okay. We'll go ahead and look at that as well. Here's an example of a comment towards the top. You don't want to necessarily just, randomly add comments everywhere. Only if there's something that you want to stand out for some reason. You don't want to say this is a header, this is a footer, this is the main. Really, you only, you want comments if they're some reason to do that. Maybe you could put, for student stuff, you could put the date and the student's name in there, right? At the top, something like that, right? If you're doing something special in there, as we get more advanced, we do more advanced stuff, it's a good idea to maybe put a comment about some of that stuff in there. But like here, this is a little overkill. This is just an example though, I know. But use a footer area to add, just showing you how to use a comment. Obviously, you don't really want to do this in the real world. Your page becomes quite a mess of comments pretty quickly. All right. Heading elements. So there's different types of heading elements. Okay. Heading elements provide a title or heading before a paragraph of text or section on a page. Appear in a larger font size than a normal. Okay. And we will take a look at that here shortly. So it's just showing you some examples of headings there. Here's heading elements. Okay, this is a H1 tag, H2, H3, H4, H5, H6. Okay, and I'll show you that here in a minute. Static content. So web page content, static content that will appear on every web page can be added to a web page. Like business name, logo, website links, footer information. Here's an example of content added between a header tag for this Forward Fitness. And do want to kind of mention this. You'll learn is later on, most of the stuff we'll be doing in this course is kind of like static content. I do have an idea for a midterm on something. We get some little bit more dynamic content. We're going to be pulling it from somewhere else. But for the most, this course is more, we're not grabbing data from other things. Pretty much, we build our own content too. Not that people are writers or content providers in themselves, but that's kind of what this course is more about, is kind of, we're not accessing too much external stuff, okay? Towards the end, we'll do a little bit of that later on in some certain circumstances. In the real life, a website's going to go grab data from the server, right? But we won't be kind of really doing that in here, okay? We'll talk about that later, though. All right, just kind of showing that. Symbols. So a symbol can be added to an HTML web page by typing its HTML entity name or entity number, okay? Inserting an HTML character entity in the code displays a reserved HTML character on the web page. Entity name is an abbreviated name. Entity number is a combination of the £sign and a numeric code. Okay, we're going to take a look at that here in a minute. And so here's a content, and so you've got these like pipes, right? These pipes are going to be symbols. Okay, you've got an @ sign for copyright. You have an @ sign for an email. Okay, another thing is, like, how we use tags. We use open bracket. Well, you can't just put an open bracket in your comments, right? Or not in your comments, in your content on your page, right? Those brackets mean something for that HTML, and that browser's going to look at that bracket and say, okay, this is a beginning tag. Okay, so you can't have a bracket within your HTML. You have to use one of these entity codes. Okay, so here's, basically the bracket's a less than or greater than sign, right? But copyright symbol. So to put a copyright symbol right in your code, right, in your content, you can use either @copy, or you can use this entity number. A registered trademark, you can use @reg, or you can use this entity number. This is for euros, okay? This is for ampersands, for an ampersand, less than or greater than, okay? And also there's this idea, there's a non-breaking space. Sometimes you want to put one little space between something, right? And the correct way to kind of do that is just use a non-breaking space. Validating HTML documents. After creating an HTML file, the document is validated to verify HTML code validity. Validator checks for errors, indicates where they are located, and suggests corrections. Okay, and we will take a look at that here today. So we will go ahead and upload something to this markup validation service so you can see how that works. Okay, and it'll show errors. So after creating a template for a website, you can save time by using the template to create web pages in the site. The advantage of starting with a template is that it includes the content and HTML elements appear on every page. Okay, this is just showing you an example of a home page using the template. All right. So the big thing I'm going to look, going to just kind of show you. I kind of want to show you some of the I'll show you the symbols, how we add those symbols within the code. I want to show you the heading, the H1 heading, the different headings, and also just those different semantic tags like header, footer, nav, main. Okay. So I'm going to show you that, and then I'm going to go ahead and we're going to just take that and we're going to take that over to a service that validates it. Okay. So let's go look at the code here for that. Okay, so I just kind of created a sample little template for this Forward Fitness Club. And here's our basic tags that we've already used. All right, we're familiar with all of these. The doc type, HTML, the head, title, meta, and the body tag, right? So also, here's the new ones that we're looking at is the header. In this case, we've got a header with an H1. H1 is a heading one, and that the lower the number, the bigger the heading. Okay, so you would think because there's H1 all the way through H6, so you think the H6 would be the biggest one, but it's actually the smallest one. H1's the biggest one, and actually being H1 is really like the most important one. H1's the biggest, so look at it as importance. H1 is the most important, then 2, 3. We'll take a look at that in this other file I have here in a minute. But here's your header, and then here's a nav, which is your navigation. Okay, here we're using a code, right? We're using a code for that a pipe. So here, why don't we look at it real quick? It helps out a little bit. So here it is. Here's our H1 tag. Why don't I just kind of put it over there also? That'll make things a little easier for us. And get rid of that. We don't need this over there. There we go. So here's our Forward Fitness Club. All right. Here's our web page title. It's always going to be up here in our tab, our title up there. Obviously, we have our character set. So we come down here. Our H1 is the biggest one. So you don't have to. One thing you best practice wise, you don't want to just. You really need to follow a certain. You need to start with an H1 tag and work your way down. And you don't necessarily have to have all the different headings, but you don't want to just say, I'm just going to put H2s at the top of mine or H3s. And there's actually a very good reason for that is there's like screen readers for accessibility. Accessibility is very important. I know we kind of talked about it a little bit before, but if there's screen readers for someone who may be visually impaired or hearing really doesn't count for that, but visually impaired. And so those screen readers will handle things based on the tag. So they know an H1 tag is more important than an H2 tag, H3 tag. So there's these screen readers, accessibility readers that actually use that, and also search engine optimization. All these different search engines like Google, etc., they actually have little content robots that are always on the internet all the time, reading pages, right? They're indexing all of the pages on the internet. And as part of that, they're actually reading your page. And if you've got if you're following the correct semantic order of things, right? So you want to follow the right semantic order, and that's the same thing with the headings. That H1 tag is the most important one, and the H6 is the least important one, right? So that follows that semantic order. But like I said, you don't necessarily have to. If you have an H1 tag, you could have just an H1 tag, and that's it on your on your page. It depends on how much content you have and if it makes sense that there's different ones. So you could have an H1 and then an H2, 3 or 4 H2s, then an H3, right? And then that's it, right? So there's not like a certain way you have to do it, but you don't want to just randomly say, I just want to do only H6 tags on my thing. You really need to start with an H1 and then you work your way down from there, okay? You should follow that like that, okay? And then over here, we were talking about this navigation. So we have this pipe, right? And this is that on your keyboard, you've got the pipe, which is, I think, a shift up here, the shift key, and then, up right here down below your backspace, you've got that pipe, right? So that's a pipe right there, and this is the code for that, right? And we're also using these non-breaking spaces. If we don't have a non-breaking space, right, you see how that moved over there on the left-hand side? And that's another thing I kind of didn't mention. With Live Server, well, once you bring something up in Live Server and you see localhost like this, once you make any change on here, and once you make any change, it will automatically make the change on your web page, which is very nice, okay? And for me, I have mine set to autosave as well, okay? If you don't have autosave and you make a change, you're gonna have to do file save or do a Control-S to save it. Then it will reflect over there. But that's what happens. You get rid of those non-breaking spaces, right? Just adding a little more space. So that was a navigation. And then we have over here the main content. We have a bunch of paragraph tags within our main content. Okay. And then under that, we have a footer. And our footer contains 2 different P tags here, paragraph tags, and we'll also have this @copy, right? So this is using a copyright sign, okay, and all rights reserved. And then also here, they are using an @ sign right there as well. Yeah, it's okay to do as the @ sign, but the copyright sign. To get a copyright sign, there's not a key, right? There's not a key on your keyboard for a copyright. Okay, there's not a key, right? So you have to use a code, and this is how we do that, right? If we went back to the PowerPoint real quick. Way too far, didn't I? So here's we use the entity name there. Okay, so that other one was entity number. We use the entity number for the pipe, right? For the pipe. And I'll send you a link. Let me write that down. I'll send you a link to all the different ones that are available. Okay. All right. Write that down. All right. So I guess that's about it here on here. This is just kind of a base template. And here, so let's go ahead and test this thing though. So the first thing we want to do is make sure we grab that file or know where that thing's at, right? And so here's another feature that can be very helpful. So here's this template. And click Reveal in File Explorer. So it kind of goes right to that, right? It's kind of can be very helpful at times, all right? And let me show you what we're going to do here on that. So here's validator.w. You can just search for W3C markup validation, just W3C validator, whatever. This is very popular, validate by file upload. Right, and choose the file, and I'm just gonna go up here. This is how I kind of do things, and just paste because I save that from there, copy that from there. I'm gonna grab this template here and do open. Okay, because you really can't drag things in there. You got to really go to right place. As long as you know where you're going, you can just do choose file and go through the directory path, but sometimes it's just easier to do that. Then we're going to go ahead and click check. Let's see. Document completed. No errors or warnings to show. That's good news, right? Let's go ahead and go back again. And let's go ahead and go back to our browser. Or not our browser, Visual Studio. Apologize there. Let me do let's kind of break this a little bit. Let's save this. Right? So that's tags all wrong there, right? You don't have to save it. It's a very bad habit of mine. I would say a bad habit, but just I'm always used to kind of saving things off for myself, so I'm always doing Control-S save, and if you've got something, click, check, if we've got it set where it's automatically saving, you don't have to worry about that, but I'll still end up do Control-S all the time, just out of habit. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and choose this file again. And let's see, make sure the time's different. Yeah. So I'm going to go ahead and select that again. And then over time, we're going to check this. Now this time we found a warning, consider, right? So we put it there, error element, right? Because we have wrong name there. It should be HTML. It's telling you this. Not allowed as a child element, right? Okay. So that's how that works. Let's go back to Visual Studio. That's fine, just like that. All right. So that was that one. I want to look at this headings and symbols here. And let me, yeah. So this is just another little file I created. It has nothing to do with assignments, just to kind of demonstrate this, right? So this is the H1 tag, right? This is the heading tag. That's the largest. Then, heading 2, heading 3, 4, 5, and this is the smallest one, right? Like I said earlier, if you're going to have heading tags on your page, you really need to follow the best practices, especially with respect to accessibility and search engine optimization. So if you're going to use headings, the first one should be a heading 1. If that's the only heading you have on your page, it's fine. If you're going to have a smaller heading than H1, you should go to a heading 2. You shouldn't go from a heading 1 and then the next one you have is a heading 4. If you're going to do a heading 1, the next one on your page should be a heading 2. All right, then a heading 3, 4, down the list. Like I said, you don't necessarily have to have them all, right? But you should follow that in that order. Okay, so that's that. And I just kind of really wanted to show you just a few other things. Then this is why, especially, so these are just the entities. We already looked at the copyright. Here's a registered trademark, okay? Right, you have either a name or you have the number, the entity name or the entity number. Here's the numbers. Names are numbers, right? So like I was talking about, if you do something like that, you can see it's telling you right there that that's a bad idea, right? Here's our greater than, right? You can't do that. Well, that's not complaining. It's probably, it is trying to close stuff. But I guarantee you run this through run this through the service, it's going to say that's an error. You can't do that because this has a special meaning within HTML, and this is the beginning of a tag, right? But there might be times you want to display something like this, and when you're doing that, right, you need to make sure that you use these codes. All right. Okay, so that's about all I have here for chapter 2. Just wanted to kind of get through this. And please let me know if you have any other questions, and we'll go from there. Thanks. Have a good day.